निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुभमुखात् अमृतद्रव संयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः जन्माद्यस्य यतः अन्वयात् इतरतश्च अत्तेषु अभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्म हृदाय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजोवारि मृगं यथा विनिमयः यत्र त्रिसर्गां दृशाः धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि सत्यं परं धीमहि त्वा सुपर्णा सयुजा सखाया समानं वृक्षं परिशस्वजाते तयोरन्यः पिप्पलं स्वाद्वत् अनश्नन् अन्योः अभिजागशीति समाने वृक्षे पुरुषो निमग्नो नीशय शोचति मुह्यमानः जुष्टं यदा मश्यति अन्यम् ईशम् अस्य महिमानमिति भीतशोकः. The glorious declaration from the Mundakopanishad, which offers the very popular analogy of the two birds perched on the branch of a tree, in many ways summarizes the instructions of Jadabharata to Maharaja Rahugana. We have been relishing the samvada between Rahugana and Jadabharata in the 5th skanda of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. The samvada began quite interestingly, turned out into a very fascinating conversation, and it all began with that one single inquiry of Rahugana. Kim iha aranam? Aham cha yogeshwaram atmatattva vidam munīnām paramam gurum vai prashtum pravartaha kim iha aranam tat sakshadharim jnana kalavatirnam. The king was on his way to inquire, to attain that quintessential knowledge from none other than Kapila, and on his way he meets with Jadabharata, and therefore accepting Jadabharata as his guru, the king inquires, Kim iha aranam? What in this very world is the most secure shelter? This was the fundamental question that drove the entire conversation. All the instructions from the master, Jadabharata, was triggered by this fundamental question. Kim iha aranam? What is the shelter? A shelter is something which we seek relief, from which we seek relief amidst life's problems, pains, distress, afflictions. As samsara by design, as in samsara, distress is intrinsic by design, therefore we are constantly seeking shelter in our lives. We are always seeking some kind of a shelter, different kinds of shelters, people, places, things, anything, anyone who can give us that relief from our afflictions, relief from distress, relief from problems of life. At various stages in life, we seek shelter from various people, various places, various things. It is the shelter that we seek that gives us a sense of security. But unfortunately, Every shelter that we seek in our life and living is only temporary. While it is quite essential that we all need various kinds of shelters, material shelters at various stages of life, they are definitely essential, but they are all temporary. They do not really offer that permanent shelter that we seek. In our life, the problems that we experience, the pains that we undergo are all like robbers. Robbers who steal away our joy and our peace. In order to escape from the distress in life, in order to escape from the afflictions that are inherent in life, we normally tend to take shelter of easy indulgences. We take shelter of bodily pleasures, sense gratification. This is what we always do. Seeking shelter of bodily pleasures in order to escape, believing the myth that we can escape from distress, pain, and afflictions which are inherent to samsara. In the process of taking shelter to these easy indulgences in life, we get attached. We get attached and we get addicted to fulfilling desires that for this desires to fulfill bodily pleasure, sense gratification. It is like, in order to escape from petty robbers, one takes the shelter of terrorists. Why would anyone with the same mind take the shelter of a terrorist in order to escape from petty robbers? But that's exactly what we do. Taking shelter of our mind, taking shelter of manas, in order to escape from life's problems is like taking shelter of terrorists in order to escape from petty robbers. When we take shelter of our mind, we let the mind dictate our life and living, the terms of our life and living. We get dragged away. We get dragged away from a principle-centered life towards constantly fulfilling the need for sense gratification. So then, what should be the most secure shelter of our life? If the mind is not the shelter of our life, is it the intellect? Intellect definitely is a very important tool for our spiritual progress. It is the intellect that helps us discriminate and choose, make the choices between right and wrong, between the good and the pleasant. Making the intellect as our shelter is no doubt important. Krishna, in the second chapter of the Gita, declares, he says, Durenahi avaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddho sharanamanicha kripana palahenavaha. Durenahi avaram karma. The actions that are tainted by selfishness, the actions that are desire driven, are inferior to those actions that are selfless. Kripana palahetavaha. He says, those who are driven by selfishness, those who are driven to act because of their need to fulfill bodily pleasures, those who are driven by sense gratification alone, they are kripana, he says. They are pitiable. They are imprisoned in samsara. Kripana. Those who is a kripana? A kripana is one who is afflicted with a dosha called karpanya dosha. Karpanya dosha. Miserliness. Kripana is one. Kripana are those who do not know who we are. Kripana are those who do not know whose we are. Kripana are those who do not know where we are. Kripana are those who do not know how we are where we are. Kripana are those who do not know why we are where we are. That's why they are imprisoned in samsara in a very pitiable state, miserly state of sorrow all the time. Kripana are those who do not know who we are. Identified with the body, they are always in a state of misidentification, do not know who we are. Kripana are those who do not know whose we are. Always seeking possessions, they become slaves to the world. They end up belonging to their own belongings. So therefore, they do not know whose we are. Kripana are those who do not know where we are. They do not realize that we are stuck in the cycle of samsara, in this material world, a place where we do not belong to, a place which is not our place to be. And Kripana are those who do not know how we are where we are. They do not understand how we got into the samsara and why we got into the samsara. In that sorry state, they indulge in actions that are selfish in nature, actions driven by attachment to the body, driven by attachment to the world of objects. Such actions, Durenahi avaram karma, buddhi yoga dhananjaya, are inferior to actions which are done in a state of an equanimous mind, where intellect is free to make the decisions, where the intellect determines what is right and what is wrong, where the mind is in a steady state, is calm, is peaceful. Buddhau sharanam anvicha. So therefore, one must take shelter in such an intellect, such a state of mind which is equanimous. Krishna therefore recommends taking shelter in one's intellect. But here, when Krishna says one must take shelter of one's intellect, the journey doesn't stop there. Gurena hyavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhau sharanamanvicha kripana palahetavaha. Buddhau sharanamanvicha. So therefore, one must take shelter in one's intellect. What Krishna actually means is one must take shelter in Krishna by using one's intellect. Taking shelter in one who is the source of our intellect, the intellect giver. What we need to understand here, when we look at the question of what should be the most secure shelter of our life, our Shastras talk about expanding our vision of the choices that we make. Expanding the vision of the choices that we make. When two choices are presented to us, a low quality product at a high price versus a high quality product at a high price, a low quality product at a high price and a high quality product at a high price, then naturally we have to, one with a sane mind would make the choice of choosing the high quality product at a high price. Now, if a third choice were to be presented, a third choice of a highest quality, a product of highest quality at the lowest price, then one should be choosing the third choice, not the second. Choosing good over the bad is definitely the right thing to do. Choosing good over the bad is definitely the right thing to do, as long as the good does not deprive us of the best. Therefore, when we are presented with what is best for us, a product of highest quality at the lowest price, why would one choose a product of high quality at a high price? When the shelter, which is the most secure, which is eternal, is always available to us with the least effort, why should we be chasing something which is temporary all the time, when the destination is perennially waiting for us? Why should we be perpetually wandering in search of our destiny? Unfortunately, the greatest irony of our life is that what we seek is always with us. What we seek is always with us. This is what the Upanishad declares. Dva suparna sayuja sakhaya samanam daksham parishasvajate tayoranyaha pippalam swadvattanashnanna abhishakachi. Two birds perched on the branch of a tree. There is this one bird which is constantly plucking the fruits of the tree and constantly eating the fruits of the tree. Some fruits are sour, some fruits are sweet, but this bird is constant in a state of grief all the time. Two birds are none other than the Jivatma and the Paramatma. The Jivatma is constantly undergoing experiences of pain and pleasure, joys and sorrows all the time, performing karma and experiencing karma phala all the time, and the Paramatma is patiently waiting, witnessing all the time. Samane vrikshe purusho nimagno anishaya shochati mukhyamanaha dushtam yada pashyati anyam isham asya mahimanam iti nishta shokaha. The only way to end the sorrow for the Jivatma is when it finally recognizes the presence of the Paramatma, changes its direction and realizes that the shelter that it has been seeking all the time has been with it. It is already sheltered securely, adequately. There is no need for it to seek any other shelter. The shelter that it has been seeking is always with it all the time. And only with that realization, with that recognition and realization, the sorrows that it has been experiencing would come to an end. So this is what Jadabharata, towards the conclusion of his exposition to Rahugana, answers. The answer to the question, what is the most secure shelter? Jadabharata declares, Kshetrajna eta manaso vibhutihi jivasya maya chitasya nityaha avirhita kvapi tirohitascha shuddho vichastehi avishuddha kartuhu. Shuddho vichastehi avishuddha kartuhu. The jiva is constantly performing kamya karma, constantly performing actions and accumulating karma and experiencing the karma phala. Therefore, the mind is always going through a continuous stream of experiences. Pravaha, it's like a pravaha, a flow, a stream of experiences all the time. Different kinds of afflictions. The jiva keeps taking different kinds of bodies, embodiments, and goes through a stream of experiences, unending stream of experiences, alternating between pain and pleasure all the time. Why the jiva is going through these experiences in samsara? Bhagavan, Kshetrajna, here the Ji is witnessing, he says. So this is what we saw in the 13th chapter of the Gita as well, when Krishna says, Kshetrajnam chapimam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetrajnayoryajnanam tattajnanam matam mama. Yattajnanam, which is the most important knowledge, that knowledge of the discriminatory knowledge between kshetra and kshetrajna. There are two kshetrajnas in every kshetra. The kshetra, the field, the cultivated land, the analogy is used for this physical body. Kshetra and kshetrajna, the jivatma indwelling in the kshetra as the kshetrajna, the knower of the kshetra. And apart from the jivatma, the kshetrajna, the knower of the kshetra, there is also another kshetrajna in the body. Krishna says, hey Arjuna, kshetrajnam cha api mam vidhi, know me also as another kshetrajna. The difference is the jivatma is the kshetrajna, the knower of the kshetra in which he dwells. Krishna, the Paramatma, is sarvajna. He is the kshetrajna who knows every kshetra, every other kshetra, all the bodies, because he indwells in every entity. That's why he says, Kshetrajnam cha apimam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Indriyani manobuddhi sattvam tejo balam dhritihi vasudevatmakan bahu kshetram kshetrajnayevacha. All indriyas, the senses, manaha, buddhihi, sattvam, tejaha, balam, dhritihi, kshetra, kshetrajna, everything belongs to the Sarvajna Vasudeva. And therefore, Jadabharata says, this Sarvajna is patiently witnessing the kshetrajna, the indweller in the body, who is stuck in samsara, the cycle of samsara, constantly undergoing various kinds of experiences. And this kshetrajna has to realize that the ultimate shelter is not somewhere outside, somewhere, it's very much with him. And that Sarvajna, who is he? Kshetrajna Atma Purushaha Puranaha Sakshat Swayam Jyotihi Ajaha Pareshaha Narayanaha Bhagavan Vasudevaha Swamayayatmani Avadhiyamanaha Yatanilaha Sthavara Jangamanam Atmasparupena Nivishta Ishet Evam Paro Bhagavan Vasudevaha Kshetrajna Atmedam Anupravishtaha. That Paramatma, that Sarvajna, Kshetrajna Atma is Purushottama, he is Puranaha, he is Sakshat Swayam Jyotihi, his self-effulgent, the source of all knowledge, of all jnana, of all effulgence. He is Ajaha, he is unborn, he is Pareshaha, the supreme ruler. He is Narayanaha. Naranam Ayanam Yaha Saha Narayanaha. Naraha Ayanam Yasya Saha Narayanaha. He is Narayana because he is transcendent. That in which resides everything, he is Narayana because he is immanent. That which resides in everything. He is the resting place of every entity. Therefore, he is Narayana. He is Bhagavan Vasudevaha. He, even though he is indweller, he is not tainted by any blemishes. The karma of the jiva does not taint him. He is Bhagavan. He is endowed with auspicious qualities, innumerable auspicious qualities. He is Vasudevaha, the supreme shelter of every entity. So therefore, Rahu Gana, who is the supreme shelter? What is that which is the most secure shelter in life? It is Kshetrajnaha Atma Purushaha Puranaha Sakshat Swayam Jyotihi Ajaha Pareshaha Narayanaha Bhagavan Vasudevaha. So Mayayatmani Avadhiyamanaha. That Vasudeva, through his wonderful powers, he has decided not just to stay outside of creation, he has decided to enter. Kshetrajna Atmedam Anupravishtaha. He decided to enter into every living entity, and he is a companion of the Jivatma throughout the Jivatma's journey in the cycle of samsara. And Jadabharata says, Rahu Gana, Bhratravyam yenam tad adabhavivyam upekshayadhyeditam apramattaha guror haresta charanopashanastraha jahivyalikam swayam atmamosham. This is the parting message of Jadabharata to Rahu Gana. Bhratravyam, the formidable enemy. Yenam is referring to the mind. He talked about a lot about how the mind hijacks the Atman in the cycle of samsara. When one believes that the mind is one's shelter, it completely hijacks. It's a formidable enemy. Tat adab helium. It becomes very, very powerful. Upekshaya. By neglecting, what happens? One completely neglects the fact that the mind becomes hijacks us. It kidnaps the Atman. It's a terrorist which essentially takes control of the Atman. Over a period of time, by completely neglecting this, the mind is made so very powerful and becomes such a powerful enemy that it becomes extremely difficult. It becomes extremely difficult to overpower it. Now, in any war, when an enemy attacks a soldier with various kinds of weapons, it is not just enough if the soldier has a strong will to succeed. He is going to be definitely defeated. Willpower alone is not going to be enough. Even if he is strong-willed, he will succumb to this enemy which attacks him with all kinds of weapons. In addition to the will, he also needs a weapon. He needs a weapon which can be used to counter this enemy, the attacking enemy. What is this kind of a weapon? So in samsara, which is like a war, the Jivatma is constantly fighting this war against this world of temptations, allurements, destructive distractions. It definitely needs a weapon. Now, this is where the Shastras say one must acquire the right kind of knowledge to counter the allurements and the temptations and the distractions of this world. But jnana alone is not enough. It is like having a powerful weapon, but if the weapon is left in the war chest, if the soldier comes out to the battlefield facing the enemy, but the weapon is there in the war chest, still it is of no use to him. The weapon has to be taken out of the war chest and used in the battle. Which is why jnana is like the weapon in the war chest. This jnana has to be assimilated. And this jnana, assimilated jnana, has to blossom into upasana. Bhakti rupa panna jnana. This is what Jadabharata says. Guroho Hare Charana Upasana Astraha. It says one needs an astra to counter this powerful enemy. Bhratrivyam yenam tat adabhravidyam upekshayadhyet iditam. This enemy that has become so very powerful over a period of time, one needs a very powerful weapon against this enemy. And what is that weapon? How does one get it? Jadabharata says, a king, one can get this weapon through the medium of a guru, guroho. And what is this weapon? Harehe charana upasanaha. Charana upasana astraha. This astra, this most powerful weapon, which is bestowed by a guru to one who can conquer this mind and battle against the worldly temptations, allurements, destructive distractions. And what is that weapon? It is Hare Charana Upasana. Upasana on the divine lotus feet of Bhagavan Hari. It is only this Upasana which is Jnana blossoming into Bhakti. It is this Upasana alone which can be used as a weapon to conquer this enemy which has become very, very powerful over a period of time. So therefore, Rahu Gana, go ahead and cultivate that Upasana of Hari. And this alone will give you that security that you are seeking. This alone will help you to conquer the mind, which is your enemy, and ensure that you get the direction in your life right. Thus, Jadabharata imparts quintessential knowledge of wisdom to Rahugana. Shukha, in the process of instructing this conversation, continues with giving more details on the glories of the descendants of Priyavrata. We need to understand that this conversation between Rahugana and Jadabharata happened in the context of Shukha imparting knowledge of the lineage of Priyavrata to Parikshit. Now, Parikshit wants to know more about Upasana. Now, this is where the conversation suddenly takes a very interesting turn. Parikshit definitely understands, with all that knowledge that he has gained so far through Shukha's instructions, understands that it is very difficult to contemplate on the subtle nature of Bhagavan. Anything which is subtle, it is very difficult to grasp by the mind. So therefore, one needs the gross form for contemplation, and this is where earlier Shukha had also given instruction on the universe being the gross form of Bhagavan himself. One can look at the universe, the entire universe, as the divine body, and this would be a way of beginning to contemplate on the glories. By contemplating on the glorious universe, one can begin to get into a state of awe of this universe, the wonders of the universe, and in the process of appreciating a painting, one can discover the painter. So therefore, contemplating on the universe becomes so very important. And it is in this context now Parikshit says, I'm also keen to understand this Vishwa, this creation, this world. I would like you to instruct to me on this universe as well. And therefore he makes a request. He submits himself to Shukha and says, Bhagavataha Gunamaye Sthula Rupa Aveshitam Manohi Agune api Sukshmatama Atma Jyotishi Pare Brahmani Bhagavati Vasudevakyam Kshamam Aveshitam Tat Uhaitad Guru Arhasi Anuvarnayitum iti. Can you please explain to me the characteristics of this universe? This is where Shukha then gets into an exposition on the cosmology. He begins to give an explanation on the cosmos. He starts to discuss Bhumandala, then goes on to discuss various planetary systems. So we need to understand here the context for Bhagavatam's cosmology. It's a very unique blend of geography, astronomy, and astrology all put together. The cosmology of Bhagavatam needs to be properly understood. There is many a time a temptation to start comparing the geography that we get to study today in science, the astronomy that we get to study today in science, and compare it with the geography, astronomy that we get to see in Bhagavatam, and start to do comparison, and then we get confused. They seem to not really tally. The detailing seems to be so very different, and in the process we get to forget the context and the purpose. We need to know the difference between the purpose of science and purpose of Shastra, the scope of science and the scope of Shastra. The purpose of science is to give us material explanations for the material phenomena. This is the purpose of science. Material explanations for material phenomena. The purpose of Shastra, on the other hand, is to give us spiritual explanation for both material and spiritual phenomena. Now, Parikshit is not really interested in land travel or space travel. We need to understand this. Parikshit is about to die very soon. The purpose here of knowing cosmology, of knowing geography, of knowing astronomy, the purpose is not that Parikshit now wants to go on a travel all around the world. So therefore he wants to know the geographical details, or he wants to travel into space. So therefore he wants to know the structure of space. That's not the purpose. The purpose of Shastras is primarily in the process of giving an exposition on cosmology to eventually bring one to focus on Bhagavan. Fixing one's mind on Krishna is the purpose. Parikshit's purpose is not to learn cosmology for the sake of cosmology, not to learn. And Shuka's exposition is not to just give details of this physical world, but to eventually drive Parikshit's mind towards fixing it on Krishna. So therefore, we need to understand there is a different purpose for science, and there is a different purpose for Shastra when it comes to dealing with geography, astronomy, and so on. Also, the scope is also widely different. The scope of science and the scope of Shastra, so very different. Even in science, we need to understand science does not offer reality. Science only offers various models of reality. Science, as we have seen over several hundreds of years, offers us various models of physical reality. We have, for example, the particle physics, we have quantum mechanics, we have relativity. They are all various models of reality, physical reality. Even within science, these various models may contradict, may not be in sync with each other. Each model presents a different perspective of reality. We need to understand the scope of each of these models. Particle physics deals with one level of reality. Quantum mechanics deals with another level of reality. Relativity deals with another level of reality. Now, when one deals with the subatomic realm in science, then the model of quantum physics works. But when one deals with the cosmic realm in science, dealing with cosmic objects, dealing with cosmic distances, it is the relativity model which works. So therefore, even in science, there are different models of presenting physical reality. So this is what in Shastras also our Puranas and Itihasas present various models of reality. But here it's not just physical reality, it is also physical, material, and spiritual reality. Bhagavatam's model of reality that it presents in Canto 5 is also different from a model of reality presented by Jyotisha Shastra. Now, the purpose of Jyotisha Shastra is very different to the purpose of the model that Bhagavatam presents. When Bhagavatam presents cosmology, the purpose is for us eventually to be in a state of awe and to fix our mind on Krishna. We need to understand that the spiritual world is so very different from when we talk about the spiritual worlds. When Bhagavatam talks about Bhumandala, it is not just talking about a physical reality, it is also talking about a combination of material worlds and spiritual worlds. A spiritual world cannot be identified by location. It only can be identified by raising our consciousness. It's not like traveling in the physical world. You travel to a spiritual world by rising one's consciousness to a spiritual level. So therefore, the model of reality, the model of cosmology that Bhagavatam presents need to be understood. The context, why Shukha is presenting this to Parikshit, needs to be understood. And it is in that context that Parikshit wants to know how he can get into a state of awe and fix his mind on Krishna through understanding a model of the cosmos. And it is in that context, Shukha presents a brilliant model of this entire cosmos. Shukha starts talking about the Bhumandala. Yovayam Dvipaha Kovalaya Kamala Koshabhyantara Koshaha Niyuta Yojana Vishalaha Samavatro Yata Pushkarapatram. He says, a Parikshit, visualize this entire Bhumandala is like a lotus flower, like a beautiful lotus flower. The entire Bhumandala. The Bhumandala is not just the planet Earth that we know. It's very important to understand. Bhumandala is much more. Bhumandala, he says, Shukha says, is resembles like a lotus flower and has 7 concentric islands. They are like patterns, spiral patterns, concentric circles that is present in the lotus flower. The length and breadth of every island keeps on increasing from the center as if one goes to the periphery. Right in the center is Jambudvipa. This Bhumandala has 7 dvipas: Jambudvipa, Shakadvipa, Shalmadvipa, Kushadvipa, Kraunchadvipa, Plakshadvipa, Pushkaradvipa. Right in the middle is Jambudvipa, whose length and breadth, he says, is 1,000,000 yojanas. The vastness of this Jambudvipa is so very vast. 1,000,000 yojanas. A yojana is typically 8 to 9 miles. So approximately we're talking of 8 to 9 million in length and breadth. This Jambudvipa, Yasmin Navavarshani Nava Yojana Sahasrayamani Ashtabihi Paryadagiribihi Suvibhaktani Bhavanti. This Jambudvipa again is divided into 9 different divisions of lands, 9 varshas. And these divisions happen through 8 mountain ranges: Shringavan, Shweta, Neela, Malyavan, Gandhamadhana, Nishadha, Hemakuta, Himalaya. Various mountain ranges divide Jambudvipa into 9 different lands. And each land area, the length, he says, is 9,000 yojanas, almost 72,000 miles. And what are these various land areas? They are named as Bharatavarsha, Kinnaravarsha, Harivadarsha, Kuruvarsha, Hiranymayavarsha, Ramyakavarsha, Ketumalavarsha, Ilavrtavarsha, Bhadrashvavarsha. These are the various varshas, various land masses in Jambudvipa. And in the process of explaining the configuration of this Bhumandala, Jambudvipa is taken up and Shuka gives a detailed exposition on the characteristics of each Varsha, the various geographic details, the mountain ranges, the rivers, and so on. And in the process of talking about the various rivers, Shuka recounts the glorious incident that happened long time back, goes back to origin of Ganga. Tatra Bhagavataha Sakshat Yajnalingasya Vishnoho Vikramato Vamapadangushta Naka Nirpinno Dwandakataha Vivarenantaha Pravishtaya Vahya Jadabharata Charana Pankaja Avajanena Aruna Kinjal Kopajarinchita Akila Jagat Agha Malapa Hopa Sparshana Mala Sakshat Bhagavat Padita Anupalakshita Vacho Abhidhiyamanati Mahata Kalena Yuga Sahasropalakakshena Divo Murdhani Avatarayattat Vishnopadam Ahuhu. He gives a very brief synopsis of Vamana Avatara and the origin of Ganga, which will be taken up in detail in the 8th skanda. Here, in the context of giving the details of Jambudvipa, the various mountains and the various rivers, he also talks about how Ganga, which was originally called Vishnupadi, Bhagavatpadi. Originally, for thousands and thousands of years, Ganga was only present in the Urdhvaloka. It was not present on Bhuloka. It was there in the Urdhvaloka. Here Shuka says, it so happened that during Vamanavatarā, in order to measure the 3 lokas, the Urdhvaloka, the Madhyaloka, and Adholoka, when Bhagavan Vavanamurti transformed into Trivikrama, raising his left foot when he started measuring the Urdhvalokas, Bhuhu, Bhoha, Soha, Maha, Janaha, Tapaha, Satyam. After measuring the Adholoka, the lower Atala, Sutala, Vitala, Mahatala, Rasatala, Patala lokas, when he was measuring, and at that time it seems the toe of Bhagavan touched the very outer shell of the Brahmanda, the Andakataga, the egg-shaped Brahmanda, and pierced through the outer layer. It is then that the cosmic divine waters from the Kshira, the causal ocean, started to sprinkle in, and Bhagavan's feet were washed by Brahma, and that water which washed Bhagavan's lotus feet, that which was called Vishnupadi, Brahmapadi, was there in the Urdhvaloka for thousands and thousands of years. Eventually, it was brought down to Bhuloka later. So Shuka here briefly recounts on the origin of Ganga, the Vishnupadi, and talks about the glory of that divine waters of Ganga. That divinity of Ganga arose because of its association with Bhagavan's lotus feet. That is why it is Vishnupadi. And Shuka continues his exposition on Jambudvipa and all the Varshas of Jambudvipa, and he further concludes in the 5th skanda of Bhagavatam further details on the other planetary systems around the Bhumandala as well. We will continue to contemplate on the glorious Ganga, which is Vishnupadi, which not only because of its name, it also its very nature of its association with Bhagavan lotus feet has this nature of purifying all of us. Let us mentally contemplate on taking a holy dip in that divine Ganga and relish in this glorious conversation of Shuka and Parikshit. And we will continue and conclude 5th skanda in the next session. Sarva Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.